session. The second session is introduction to code-based cryptography, and it will be delivered by Dr. Frederic Ezerman. You can start it.
I forgot that they want to turn us all into YouTube sensations, so I must use this. I guess everyone is ready. Can I start? Okay. I'll start with this, because it will be absurd for me to thank the organizer. I'm part of the organizing committee, so I invite myself here, actually. Why am I putting this? It's a proof to you that I'm born and, I grew up in Indonesia. I can show you my passport, but this is more convincing. I guess those who grew up in, Suharto's era, I can see some of you, a few of you, know that this is the uniform, the school, the state school uniform of that day. I grew up around 200 kilometers from here to the east, so I like to surprise people, think that they look at my name and say, okay, this guy is a foreigner, and then I start speaking very high Japanese. Shock them. Okay, well, why am I putting this? Let me start with a few minutes of why we are having this event. Okay, a few of us 4 years, 5 years back already started talking, because Romar, the speaker from Philippines, and Sompong from Thailand, and me, and who else? Fuchun, we actually belong to the same lab. Koa is the lab next door, but of course, every lunch we go out together, and then we go on the reading groups together. We share papers. We struggle together, and then we are happy if any one of us get published and things like that. Okay, we also collaborated with Koa. I have some collaboration with Romar, unfortunately not. With Fuchun also not, but with Sompong a lot. So we started talking. Given that in a few years we'll start going back into our countries or starting establishing connection, how can we sort of raise the profile of the next generation? Because in the region, okay, Singapore is different because they put a lot of money and resources into building the cryptographic and coding theoretic capabilities, but we can't say the same about the other countries here, right? I mean, it's a common experience of us that even getting scholarship to study can be quite difficult. And we were lucky enough to get that, and so we were thinking, well, let's start this roundabout thing, you know, getting, sharing what we know, sharing the challenges in cryptography with you all. So it's very nice that our friends here in Yogyakarta and our friends in Bandung in ITB are very receptive of the idea, and we are lucky enough we get some of the senior professors here. You know, you don't see them, but they put a lot of effort and pressure to those with power and money to make this happen. You know, because of course we want to keep the cost very low and to be affordable. So what I want to say is that please don't let it stop here. Let's continue. I don't know, maybe in 2 years or maybe next year we'll have something like this. I don't know. If you have ideas, if you can talk with your professors or people in your department about organizing things like this or hosting things like this, then let's keep the conversation going. In my experience, if you ask for money for good purpose, you have a better chance of getting it. And this kind of thing, you know, it's not, in the end, it's not very difficult to convince people that this is important. Second thing is, I hope you've been exposed to a lot of new ideas, and you've met new friends. You probably get, you know, a contact of people who are seriously leading the area in this in the topic that you like. Okay, just introduce yourself and keep the connection going, because well, hopefully in 5, 6, 7 years we'll see some of you leading the research in the area. Okay, so when I was in grade 1, I never thought I would do mathematics actually, because you know, you grew up in Indonesia in a village. The things that you are thinking is probably you want to be okay. The best achievement you can probably aspire to is to become a state employees and be sort of like be established in some government services or something. Well, that was at least the dreams of many of my contemporaries. But we have different things happening in life, and so here we are. Okay, so I'll stop there on the personal notes and go more into the topics right now. All right, I write the introduction, and this is really introduction, because originally I planned to talk about quantum stabilizer codes for both sessions. It's a topic that I've worked the longest. But then I realized, okay, Koa has done the lattice space. We don't know anyone who can do multivariate, so I will give the introduction on code base. Okay, this will be very introductory given the time constraint. Okay. So let me start with the big picture, because I want us to be able to situate ourselves where we are and what are the big topics that we should be aware of. If you look at the first half of the 20th century, a lot of fundamental things happening in science. So you see there, in physics, there is general relativity, which is coming out around this time, and quantum mechanics. You know, very intense debate and discussions in the 20-ish. Then formal logic, so this Gödel undecidability results. You know, up to now I still cannot say that I understand that. But at least people who do understand it realize how important it is. So in economics, there is a lot of new economics perspective, especially started by Keynes, and then you have an explosion in computer science, really explosions, right after the Second World War. Of course, it started during the war, but then it was classified. And then after that, you have all those foundational works done. And then statistics also started being established, and we have probability getting put on a very formal and secure footing. And the one that will concern us most is Shannon. Well, I don't need to talk about how important his contributions are, we all know. So, what is this? Okay, so this is a super big picture, and we're still really in the middle of it, although many people can say, well, now we have IoT, we have all these other things. Yes, but I don't need those for my talk, so I stop at this point only. So what I want to show after this very big picture is still a big picture, but not that big, is how quantum mechanics, computer science, and information theory interact, and what are some of the implications. In the first part here, I will discuss about code base. The second part is I will share with you the fact that we are still struggling very, very much in controlling quantum errors. So while a lot of people are saying that the current cryptographic protocols are broken, yes, it's broken in theory, but you don't break protocols in theory. You break them in the implementation, in the actual situation. So I completely revamped the presentation because I want to include illustrations about what the current situation is in terms of, if we want to break it, what kind of resources we need. And then where are we? How far are we from that? From reaching that threshold. We're still very far. So the second part, later in the afternoon, I will talk about the effort of really making quantum computing scalable. And I must say that we have not been very successful. A sort of a reality check, because maybe most of you reading the news, getting the internet filtering about all this quantum computing, how it will change, how it will revolutionize everything, and it's a solution for everything. We are still very far from that. So this is the part where the quantum mechanics and computer science and information theory started. I will begin with the quantum mechanics, and this is a picture that I really like because almost all the people who are involved in discussing the foundation of quantum mechanics are here. I will let you guess. Well, I think everybody knows who this one is. And the only lady in this picture is, of course, very easy to guess who she is. She has 2 Nobel Prizes. Who? Who? Marie Curie, yes. The rest, I think you'll see Paul Dirac and Heisenberg and everybody else there. So this is where they started debating. The debate's still ongoing. So, but then I want to highlight one thing. This is a very important thing. No, you often forget that information is very physical. When you send picture through your mobile phone, you don't think about the physicality of it. It's just that you are sure that at the end it will be received. But indeed, information is physical, and that's why when we are talking about information processing, we are dealing with information theory, computing, and physics. Okay, it's highly interdisciplinary, and then when we are talking about information processing, as mathematicians and computer scientists, as a good number of us here are, we need to think about physical realizations. We can't just think about fancy systems, interesting mathematics. Well, these are good as well, but to really make a big impact, what are the physical realizations? So in physics, the debate is still very, very philosophical. Still, in many places in the world, they're still debating about what is the meaning of quantum mechanics and so on and so forth. But you started seeing people who says, no, we don't care about that. Okay, we don't really care about that. That has been going on for too long. No resolutions is not interesting anymore. We want to see how we can use the power of quantum mechanics for information processing. And actually, if you continue in that direction, actually it goes back into the debate. Because then we are saying, if we can show, when we apply quantum mechanics on information processing, can we establish that the theory is complete? So actually it goes back there again, but then a lot of people now, especially the last few generations, they don't really care about that. Debates is like, okay, those are for the old folks. We now talk about how to use quantum mechanics for information processing. Okay, and in that interpretation, they talk about informations and probabilities and observables, quantum mechanics. So, if you want to go into quantum information processing, please don't study the classical quantum mechanics textbooks. You'll go through a whole lot of solving differential equations in the whole system, a whole lot of them, and it's not going to be useful for your purpose. Okay? So don't go into this, introduction quantum mechanics for physics people who are doing, their PhD in quantum mechanics. No. If you want to go quantum information processing, there are standard textbooks now that helps you focus into this direction. So, I've mentioned about this. But, we are here in coding theory and cryptography, so we talk about building quantum computer to break encryptions, to break systems. But really, what was the original idea behind it? It's very different. Let's look at, I always say to myself and to people who care to listen, if you want to learn from the very source. Read the masters. Don't read the interpretation. So this is one paper that I would recommend. It doesn't have a lot of physics in it, just like Adi Shamir's How to Share Secret or the RSA paper. There are very few equations there. But the ideas, they talk about ideas. The ideas is really the big thing. After that, there will be hundreds of papers with 40 equations on it. These are essentially footnotes to the main idea, right? So read really the original source, and this is the original source. It is actually a speech that Feynman gave on a meeting. So of course the applications you have seen yesterday, Kwa gave a very nice overview of the development on that. I will augment it a little bit later. But let's take a look at the paper. And what did Feynman actually say? Okay, so here is Feynman paper. I hope you can see it. I highlighted a few parts because I'm lazy to copy. Okay, so here, so Feynman's main ideas is not about cryptography. Remember the year. Look at the year where this paper is published. With cryptography, we just have the public key RSA just come out and so on. So probably it's not registered in the physics community yet. But he says here, what kind of computer are we going to use to simulate physics? His concern is there are a lot of computational problems in physics that the digital computer simply cannot handle. The memory, the requirement for processing, the very nature of the processing is different. So then he says, if we are going to build computers that can simulate physics reasonably, given finite memory and finite time, you don't want to wait centuries for your computation to finish, what kind of computers will that be? And then here he outlines some ideas, and of course, in his usual provocative way, he said, first, what kind of physics are we looking into? Classical mechanics, for most parts, you can do using digital computers, but then what kind of physics do you want to do with this? You see here, and this is a very crazy idea. Well, nowadays we don't really think of it about crazy, but those days it's crazy. I mean, this was in 1982. I want to talk about the possibility that there is an exact simulation that the computer will do exactly the same as nature. Meaning it can mimic how nature processes information. If other people who are not Nobel laureates saying this thing, maybe they'll just say, go home, go home. You know, you're not, who are you? You're probably drinking too much or taking marijuana, you know, but someone like him, you know, in a distinguished meeting, of course, everybody listened. And so, okay. So then, okay, so he discussed the framework, but then here toward the end is the challenge. He's discussed the methods that people have looked into, the fact that in quantum mechanics you can do reversible computing, which you cannot do in digital computing. That's why we have heat. You know, when we compute, suddenly your computers, for example, you assign it a more difficult task, then more heat will be generated. But then he says, well, can computing be done reversibly? And okay, there's nothing in quantum mechanics that prohibits that. And then he says, okay, maybe it's possible. And then, of course, it was shown to be possible by Bennett and many others after Toffoli. So here, toward the end, I'm not happy with all the analysis that go with just the classical theory, because nature isn't classical. Okay, here, okay, I don't know why, I don't know how it makes into a published journal versions, but again, he's Richard Feynman saying, so maybe the editor doesn't want to edit him. Damn it, and if you want to make a simulation of nature, you better make it quantum mechanical. And it is a wonderful problem because it doesn't look so easy. You know, this is a call to all those physicists present. Let's make it happen. And then, of course, slowly, after that, you know, David Deutsch come up with the formulations, the Turing analog for quantum processors, and then, okay, of course, now we have a few qubits, maybe 70 qubits, processing power and so on, okay? But if you want to understand the big thinking behind why we are talking about quantum computers at all, I would suggest you, if you have a few hours of time waiting or traveling, pull this paper out, read it. So, the applications to cryptography comes very much later. And in fact, if you are following a little bit on the physics literature, the best implementations they have now for small qubit, okay, reasonably small qubit, is how to design drugs and how to look at to study the symmetry properties of viruses. Really things related to the original insight of simulating nature with computers. You will see papers saying things like, what can you do with a small number of qubits? This paper comes in the physics literature. Okay, if you have time, look at them. There is a big world out there, not just limited to crypto and coding. So, I'm done with that now. Let me go back to the proper part that we are discussing here, which is the quantum computing task. We have heard probably, I mean, at this point I'm really sometimes fed up listening to people saying that RSA is broken, ECDLP is broken. I would say, yeah, can you break it? Break it then. If it is broken, break it. It's broken in theory, so don't worry too much just yet. Okay, I need to put a note on it, okay? We don't know what the governments, powerful governments are doing in the basement, okay? The paper that don't get published. Because I've been working in this area, reading this since the, I would say, mid-2000. And some of the very big names suddenly after some time completely disappear, never publishing anything, never showing any algorithm they produce. But they still go to conferences, so you know that they are still active. But you don't know where they work and what kind of thing they have produced so far, okay? But Microsoft is also having a lot of resources, IBM also having a lot of resources. people in academia also have a lot of resources. So even if we are behind, it won't be too far behind. But don't take me on this statement, okay? You should not predict the future. It's very, very difficult to do. So let's look at this. It's a very ambitious process if you're just looking at quantum computing related to cryptography and coding theory. You say, okay, efficient quantum algorithms are known. This is what I like. You don't say that they are broken. You say that efficient quantum algorithms are known. Okay? This is a correct statement, I think. The problem is you don't have the hardware. Where do you run this algorithm? So, breaking RSA, factorings, they are okay. Efficient algorithms are known. But breaking all public key crypto system and trapdoors one-way functions is not yet. And of course, we're talking about complexity, solving NP-complete problems on average. And this really connect to what we have later, syndrome decoding problem. It's here. So code-based cryptography is quite all right. It's up there. Average case. Lattice-based is even better. Lattice-based is there, the security. Kwa mentioned about the reduction from average to worst case, right? And that's, so we are still, if we can implement all these post-quantum cryptography protocols, well, quantum algorithms are not even known for this. Actually, Peter Shor himself wrote an article saying why hasn't there been any big breakthrough in quantum algorithms. It's an interesting reflection. I'm not going further. Just look it up if you want. No? Essentially, since Grover algorithm and Shor algorithm, we see very little progress in terms of a very powerful quantum algorithm that really affect a lot of security guarantee for crypto systems. So that's the situation. Okay? I'm actually debating with myself about presenting this today because I don't want to tamper your enthusiasm, you know. On the other hand, I want to present the view as someone who has been in the area for many years. I think it is good to look at it in a very balanced perspective. I'm not saying that therefore there are not no interesting problems. There are so many interesting problems. And wow, like Feynman said, it's not easy. So if you can make progress, it's fantastic. So this is the big picture. Any questions so far? Question? All right. This is related to what I just said, Sorry. What I just said here, efficient quantum algorithms are known. All right. So, it's a table that I took from Danny Bernstein and Tanya Lange article in Nature. Okay, that's a volume. I'm sure you can find the article if you want to look into it. But here, examples of widely deployed cryptographic system and their conjectured security level. Here, it's always conjecture. So people who know this stuff will not say for sure. They say conjecture. Why? Oh, we don't have the tool to break it. The hardware is not there. It's just an estimate, a rough estimate, an educated guess about the situation. Okay. So here, symmetric AS. Like before, the pre-quantum security, because of Grover algorithm, you take the square root. And of course, it's in the power, so when you take the square root, you just half the power, right? So there, everything is half. And so the solution will double the key length. So Grover is not very devastating. And this one, Mac, has no impact. Hash function also just half it. And then here, RSA, this is the length of the key, okay? ECTS, TSA, and Diffie-Hellman, all this thing, it says broken. If you can implement this on that end, okay, I want to highlight on that end, because after this, my next slide will be for a given n, how many quantum gates, quantum bits do you need to produce to be able to handle that n? The picture doesn't look very nice. And this is why research in quantum error correcting code, quantum control code, quantum implementation is really, really, really useful, and it's really, they're pushing hard for this. Okay, so take a look at this, okay? This key length, okay? So, let me start with the dissenting voices. Actually, I will show it here, not the next slide, I'm sorry. So, dissenting voices, you see a lot of enthusiasm in the press, you know, Prime Minister of Canada talking about this. I heard also from the Prime Minister in Singapore and Sydney, people in Australia going big about this. Europe, China, funding is really big, okay? Big funding. But then, as I said, sometimes when you listen to people who are marketing, you need to discount their proposition by, I don't know, 50%, 60%. Typically, it's not as rosy as being portrayed. As I mentioned, the main issue is engineering. Is it scalable? Is it scalable? Another is theoretical, and I don't have the time to cover this, but this is, I think this is one of a representative article that will be good for you to read. This is the long version. The short version is in Gil Kalai lecture in the Congress of Mathematicians, the one last year. Okay, he has also there a version where he discussed this. So essentially what he's saying is that in some portion of the engineering side, things will break down. I hope not. And many people in the quantum information processing community and quantum computing community believe that it is not. But of course, you know, it's, if you can, listen to people who disagree with you, because you may learn something. Okay. You want to break RSA 3000 something, right? Let's look at what we can do. The first paper that show it is, of course, the paper of Shor. And look at the number. Fantastic, isn't it? Can you factor 15? Okay. And this one is, so, okay, you look at this, Shor. The algorithm minimization is a variant of Shor. Well, it takes inspiration from Shor, but it's actually different, okay? The thing with Shor, the implementation of Shor algorithm in the early days is that you need some prior knowledge about the solution. So before you factor, you need some information about what the factors might be. So it's a double cheating, really. But I'm not saying that it is not a powerful mathematical result, okay? If you read Shor original paper, you see how fantastic the way he combined all the available tools. The key insight there is to recognize that you can perform discrete Fourier transform so much faster in quantum computer, if you can build it. Okay, so it is a very powerful mathematical computer scientific result. Implementing it is a different issue altogether. So, can you factor this, 56,153? Some of you may be able to do it right now. But I can use Python or Magma, and then, you know, not just this, I can handle a much larger number. So what happened when we talk about the number who has 3,000 plus digits? That's a very large number. We're still very far. Look at this. It's not yet. Well, this is by end of 2014. I couldn't find anything more recent that provided in a very nice. So this is compiled by Datani and Bryans. These two people are the one implementing the factorization for this, for the 5-digit. And when this paper came out, I was so excited. I brought it up to Gojan's office and I show it. Gojan, this one. Now we have 5 digits. And he says that, yeah, 5 digits. Better than 2 digits, but still. I thought at that point, you know, when the scaling started happening, then soon we will have 100 digits and 200 digits. And maybe 3,000 digits within reach, but so far, nothing. Nothing that significant. So, Martin Rotella and Christas Fores at Microsoft Research. And Martin is an expert in designing algorithm and then designing the circuit for the algorithm. So what they presented here is just one portion of many alternatives. When they say, all right, what will be the resource estimate required if I want to implement Shor algorithm to factor n bit numbers? Okay, the T here is a Toffoli gate. Toffoli gate. It's a very important gate in quantum information processing. That's the only thing I want to mention. Look at this, okay? This is the implementation which is, as of the publication of this paper, it was the fastest. Look at the N, and look at the number of gates it's required. Look at that. You don't get to see this too often in the press, or in the talk of people who ask for money from the politicians. But this is, I mean, these are done by very competent people who have access to some, you know, small-scale quantum computers. I don't have access to such things, so I trust their estimate. And of course, Microsoft has been working very hard to do this, just like Google, just like many other companies, okay? But look at their estimate. Does this number look reasonable to you? That's the number of Toffoli gate they need to build, and this is the number of logical qubits that they need to build. I mean, Sujitman, Buket, myself, we've been working on this quantum error correcting codes, and the kind of parameters you will see from our work later in the second session is super far from this, okay? We haven't even reached more than 100 qubits. So, a big challenge. If you can devise a system that can scale it up very, you know, very strongly, then that's it. Then we may have a chance of realizing it. But so far, we are still very far from it. So that RSA 3000 something, right? It lies between this, the second and the third. And you look at the power, it scares me. And remember that the hardware will not just implement Shor algorithm. It needs qubit to do other things as well. Right? So this is, for this one, you need this number. But what about for more? Well, now, what about applying Grover algorithm to AES? Okay? Look at the number of gates. This is even crazier. Although the number of gates is actually smaller. Why? Because Grover algorithm is a lot simpler than Shor algorithm in terms of its circuit. Shor algorithm needs to do discrete Fourier transform. It needs to do a lot of things. Grover algorithm is not. Grover algorithm essentially just probability amplification. It needs to do a lot of iteration, but the circuit is not very complicated. So that's why if you're asking why we have that number of gates and here we have that number of gates. That's what happened. And this one, same thinking behind breaking SHA 2 and 3, and you see this number's really, really bad. Okay, so we go from the very big picture down to the situations on the implementations, and now we're going to the core of the talk on the background and code-based encryption. But first, anyone have questions? Any questions? Okay, no questions. I'm not sure if that's good or bad. Well, all right. Yesterday, well, during course presentations, you have looked at the lattice-based perspective, okay, and we have a lot of parallels in the code base as well. So, of course, for every system, you need to know what your security assumptions are, and then you need to know what you can make, what you can make with the basic ingredients. I'm trying not to make things too complicated while still presenting a clear picture. This is very difficult to do, so if you don't get it in one go, it's probably my fault. I'm trying to give a good overview and highlighting the main points. So if anything is not clear, please ask, or you can approach me later if you're not feeling comfortable asking in big group. Okay? Things will get a bit technical, but I try not to go too deep. All right. So the core of code-based encryption is and a few other protocol is syndrome decoding problem. So it is well known to be NP complete. This is the paper. Again, McAleese and Berlekamp, and Van Tilburg is probably not as famous as these two, but Berlekamp-Massey algorithm, Berlekamp algorithm, so on, so many things. McAleese, of course, the McAleese crypto system named after him. Widely believed to be intractable in average case for appropriate choice of parameters. Now, I highlight the appropriate choice of parameters because in the literatures, you will find papers that says breaking McAleese. What they broke were the original McAleese. The parameter designed in the 1978. Now, of course, with advancement in software and hardware, you can lower the work factor required to break it. But the McAleese crypto system itself can be easily scaled up, and there is no problem with it. So it's not broken, at least not that we know of, okay? It's funny that in the same conference, or is it in the same journal, the paper says we break McAleese, the next one says McAleese is quantum secure. And it's in the same venue, so sometimes things like that happen. Okay? So I will sort of give an illustration what this appropriate choice of parameters will be. But here is the syndrome decoding problem. Okay, this MRW, I will explain what they are from the statement here. Okay, the syndrome decoding problem with these three parameters asks the following thing. I give you a uniformly random matrix, it's a binary, R rows and M columns, and then now I take a uniformly random syndrome. Syndrome is just what? It's just a vector. It's just a vector, binary string of length R, and then I give you, okay, so I think you need to guess. It asks you to find this vector S. This BMW is basically, it's binary. The length is M, and the weight is W. So the number of non-zero entries, the number of ones is W, okay? The length is M, it's binary, so W is the number of ones. Okay, it asks, find me S such that this relationship is satisfied. If you notice, this is just a linear transformation. If H is a matrix, okay? So I give you H, taken randomly, and I give you a syndrome, the syndrome of this S. I give you the syndrome and the matrix, and I ask you to guess what was being sent. In coding theory, what happened is, you receive a message, you compute the syndrome. If the syndrome is 0, that means it's a valid code word. There is nothing you have to do. If the syndrome is not 0, what do you do? Depending on the properties of the codes and the decoder, you may or may not be able to decode. Right? But if you design your code well, you can decode. So the syndrome sort of measure how far are you from a real code word. And I want you to keep this in mind. How far are you from the real code word? Because that will be an important concept we'll use later. So this PPT is just a polynomial, probabilistic polynomial time algorithm. And lambda is just some security parameter, you know. You can think of it as some length that we decide. Or some value is like 80. That means your adversary need to break it in time 2 raised to 80 or something. It's just a security parameter. So this is stated a bit formally, but essentially what it's asking is, I give you a syndrome, I give you a matrix, can you guess what was being sent? And this is hard. Okay, then let's take a look at the mechanism. What does it say? So mechanism is originally proposed in 1978. The title is a public key crypto system based on algebraic coding theory. The original mechanism uses this parameter. So the length of the code is 1024, so it's 2 raised to 10. Okay, the rate is almost half, just slightly over half. That's the dimension of the code. Okay, and this is the minimum distance. And if you look at the minimum distance, the error correcting capability is up to about half the minimum distance, right? It's d minus 1 over 2. You take the floor. So it says, okay, right, anything with 50 errors it can handle. So if we go back here, 50 error, it can handle, W up to 50. So, okay, as I said, the original parameter is no longer secure, but then you can build the mechanism very, very big, no problem. For enhanced security, typically what we use, and this is the one that Ko and me use in our recent work, is you use the randomized variant suggested by Nojima and friends. So what happened here, you want to hide your plain text. Okay? Uniformly random factor is concatenated to the plain text. But even if you don't care about this, the same ideas hold. Okay, I was just checking how I'm doing in terms of time. Doing all right. Okay, so this was in 1978, and that's the parameter. I'll begin with the setup. Okay, some of you might be asking, what is this COPA code? Relax. We'll take a look at it later, okay? Let's do the setup first. So, you select suitable parameters N, K, and T. If you're talking about code-based cryptography, the T here is the number of errors that you can correct, okay? So this T is actually around d minus 1 over 2. If you want to think like a coding theorist, in terms of minimum distance, that distance must be at least 2t plus 1. Okay, that clear, the translation? Alright. In crypto, we talk about the length of the string, the weight of this error string. Okay? Alright, so now, this part here, choose K1 and K2 is the one where we are padding the plain text, okay? It's because of this protocol. There is nothing lost if you just thinking, I don't do K1 and K2, I'm just doing, the whole thing is a plain text, the whole K. I don't add any randomization to the plain text, okay? That's also fine. So the plain text space is F to K2, F2 to K2, And okay, the F2 to K1 string is the one that you use to mask. Okay, so the key generations, you produce a generator matrix G prime of a randomly selected GOPA code. So the set of key is a family of GOPA code. Okay? From this family of GOPA code, you take one random instantiation. There are available tools open online for this kind of thing. Okay? Now, you choose a random invertible matrix S. This is random invertible matrix in here. And then you choose a random permutation matrix. Choose a random permutation matrix, and then now G here is your public key. G is your public key, and look at that form. So S, G prime, and P. Again, P is permutation matrix, S is an invertible matrix. So what is happening here? My public key is G, and there I'm hiding a well-structured matrix. So this matrix G prime, right, is a generator matrix, so it is well-structured. If you know how it is constructed, you know everything about it. Right? Now, we hide it from the right by scrambling it. The permutation matrix is essentially just scrambled. Okay? And from the left, we are doing this invertible matrix. It is often chosen to be sparse, meaning okay, not too many non-zero entries. But that's just one technical detail. Essentially, anything invertible satisfying that property you can use. Okay? Now you publish G and you keep S, G prime and P. You don't publish it. Of course, you publish it and there's no point. Right? Now, just pause for a while and look at what is happening there. How big are these matrices? These are big matrices. Okay? Those of you who have implemented RSA or elliptic curve crypto knows how short the key is. So if you use this McAleese crypto system, what happened? You need to store 3 matrices. Permutation matrix, you can just store the permutation pattern. Okay? You don't need to store the whole matrix. But then, this GOPA code, you need to store the whole matrix. And then this S matrix, you also need to store it. So it's big. That means your key is big. That means it's bad. You don't want your key to be too big. Right? Any question about this? This is very important. Then now, okay, how do you encrypt? And this part here, the F2K1 is the randomization part that I put, you know, the variant that we randomize. In the in the deterministic one, the non-randomized, you can just ignore this. Okay, so what happened here? The E is an error factor that we are going to add. It's chosen from the binary string of length n with weight t. Okay, string of length n, the weight is t. Chosen randomly. So it's 1 over n choose t. Okay? The probability for each one of them. And if your n is big and your t is, you know, around 50 or so, then this value, the probability is super small, that your adversary can guess it immediately. Okay. So now the ciphertext, so your message is M, your U is the padding matrix. Okay? And this part, what is this part? Come on. Most of you are coding theorists. What is this part? This part here times G. It's just what? It's just an encoding. Right? How do you encode the message? Well, you multiply it with the generator matrix. Very nice and simple idea, right? That's what happened. And then what happened here? You dirty the well. You are encoding and then you purposely throw in error. Now you see here the difference between coding theory and cryptography. In coding theory, we want fidelity. Error we don't like. In crypto, sometimes we like error, if we can control it and it confuses our adversary. And here's the key. We use a code that we know the structure well, so we can recover the original message, throwing away the error. For your adversary, not knowing the structure of the code is very confusing. Which part is the information part, which part is the non-information part, where does this error throwing it to? Think of it this way. Linear algebra is just moving vectors in one space to another space, right? You have a vector here, and if you're doing coding theory, if your code is good, you have a proper balance. You send it to another space, and if there is any error happening there, you can recover. And of course, you are enlarging the space because you want some error correcting capability. So, within that circle of radius t, there are many vectors. So look at how confusing it is for the adversaries. Doesn't know the structure, doesn't know if there is a Gopa code under there, doesn't know what the error vector is. It doesn't know where this encoded message is being sent to which direction. Okay? It's a fantastic simple idea, right? Turning things from encoding, coding theory into confusing your adversary. So, that's just the key. I encode my message and then I throw in error. The encoder I use, I hide the structure, but I know how to recover the structure. Okay? Once I know that I have to recover the structure, I have a nice decoder, and I'm in business. Okay? I'm in business. But then, for the adversary, how is the situation? We'll take a look. Now, how can I decrypt? This permutation matrix, okay, when you see this ciphertext here, you do the permutation matrix, what happened? What happened to E times the permutation matrix? Okay, the first part here, UMG, G times the permutation matrix, remember that G is here. So it times the permutation matrix. The inverse of a permutation matrix is itself. So you multiply it with the inverse, disappear. Clever, right? What happened to this EP inverse? I have an error vector with T1s on it. I apply permutation matrix, I still have an error vector with T1s on it. The position just changed. But of course, from the perspective of the decoder, it doesn't care. It's still T error. It's still within its capability to correct. So it doesn't change anything in terms of raising the difficulty, okay? It's fantastic. So what happened? Now after that, okay, you have this, and then when you multiply it, you look at M prime S, okay? You can decode. So what you're decoding is not actually your original message, you're decoding this. Decode is the error correcting algorithm with respect to the original Gopa. If it fails, then return this symbol. That means something is wrong in the implementation. Either the error is not taken care of well, or you use a wrong decoder, or there's something wrong. This happens with very small probability. And then now what? Well, you know the inverse of S because S is invertible and you know S, so you can compute the inverse, then you can compute this. Okay? So now you can parse it back, U and M, and you get it. So the big picture, the big concept of this is this. You throw in an error into an encoded message, but this error, after you apply the permutations, it's still having the same weight. Still, you can decode it using the decoder that you know from the original matrix, original code. It's a fantastic idea. Simple. 1978. And then we need to discuss the security. Okay, so from the perspective of the attacker, what can it do? Okay, the scheme is CPA secure. Still remember what CPA secure is? Chosen plain text attack. So the adversary can give plain text. Okay, this is my plain text. Run it through the entire system. Another plain text. Run it through the entire system and see what happens. So that's CPA security. Okay, and then this one, the two problems here are the one that we assume to be hard. And if these two problems are hard, then the original system is secure, provably secure, we can say. But of course, if these assumptions are not true, then well, anything goes. So here we say the decisional McAleese problems is to distinguish between G, okay, is it uniformly generated or is it a hidden COPA? Is it a hidden COPA or is uniformly generated? So, to the adversary, if he looks at this public key, right? Is this randomly generated or is this something which has a strong structure? The adversary, given that this problem is hard, will not be able to decide. It looks random. I can't find any distinguishing structure in it. Okay, the second one is decisional learning parity with fixed weight noise. We make things simple by fixing T from the beginning. Of course, there is another version where T can be, where the noise can be, or the error term can be anywhere between 1 to T. Okay, there are systems like that, but typically not favored for implementation reasons. Okay, so given a pair A and V, distinguish whether A and V is uniformly random pair or obtained by choosing this one is the padding string for your message and this is your matrix. So essentially, if I give you all the ingredients, okay, can you distinguish between the one chosen randomly or the one that the system set up? If the adversary can decide, okay, this learning parity with noise, then the security assumption is not satisfied and therefore we don't have the guarantee. This LPN, learning parity with noise, is also used a lot in other protocols like in lattice-based. So, if you consider this setup and you consider the mechanism for the McAleese, how does it differ from the basic philosophy of the RSA or elliptic curve? What happened in RSA? What are your keys? The public key is a product of two primes. The secret ones are, well, the primes. You keep them secret. If you consider your homework, we're glad that most of you did the homework, although some didn't do all the problems, but at least, you know, you tried. That's the main purpose. Is that you try to find period, right? You try to find period, modulo something, when will it become 1? After you raise it to some power. And that you can guess. Now, that is where Shor algorithm make the killing. It predict the period. Narrow down the choices of period, narrow it down further, and then finally caught it. When you look at elliptic curve, you look at the order of an element, right? There is a periodicity. If you cover that order, you go back to 1. Okay, go back to itself. There is periodicity. Regularity in the periodicity. So, Actually, Shor algorithm handle this kind of a larger set of problem. It's called the hidden subgroup problem. The hidden subgroup in elliptic curve is the torsion group, for example. Okay. Now, the code-based encryption adds some algebraic geometric aspect to it. You know, sort of like you encode something and then you wriggle it with errors. And there is no periodicity there. There is no periodicity. So when you ask yourself, why is this system still secure against known quantum attack, it's because the advantages of known quantum attack doesn't apply here. They don't apply here. So that's the big idea behind it. Lattice is also the same, right? Yesterday you hear about shortest vector problem. It's like this, you encode something, it becomes a point, and then you dirty it. You put errors on it. But in lattice space, you change the basis. So the basis that you use for your private key, you change it with something else, it becomes a bad basis. Bad for the adversary, but still good for you. You know the key to make it good again. So here, the idea is the algebraic geometric aspect of it. Linear algebra is, after all, is an algebraic tool, right? And then you sort of shift your vector. It doesn't have period. Quantum discrete Fourier transform cannot attack it. That's the key. So then you might be asking, all right, well, RSA is still far from being broken, right? At least as we know it. So why bother? Why care? Well, just like in life, diversity is good. If you learn DNA, for example, why is it that DNA is not like, why is it not, we just not split into two, you know? Why do human beings and higher biological living things, why do they propagate sexually? Why not just split themselves? Direct copy of the DNA. You know, because these combinations in the long run is better for survival. Or at least that's what I understand. I'm not a biologist. Because if you look at it, the process is more costly rather than, you know, just you copying yourself. And there are possibility that the combination lead to something catastrophic. You know, genetic disorders and stuff like that. But in general, diversity is good in the long run. So the same principle apply here. Constant evolution in protocols, diversity is good. And the second one is because we know how to do it. We know how to do it since 1978, and okay, we learn how to handle it, okay? So the overall thinking of code choice, if you choose a random linear code, right, the big insight of Shannon is you pick almost any code. It will be good for something. But then the problem is, okay, it's good, but I cannot decode. Then, I mean, okay, it's good. It will correct error, but I cannot decode, so it's not good. Okay, so if you use random linear code, then legitimate user cannot even decode. So if a good code is used, then knowing the structure gives access to fast decoder. For example, cyclic code has a super fast decoder. Copa code also has good. So the decoder is known to the legitimate users, and the code looks random to everyone else. So that's the reason why we look at those two hard problems, right? It will look random. It must look random to the others. So let's take a look at Copa code. First proposed by Valery Copa as a generalization of Ritz-Solomon code. In Ritz-Solomon code, we choose a set of polynomials, right? And then the code, you get it by evaluating the set of polynomials on sets of points. Okay? Now what is Copa code? I'm giving a very, very fake and general introduction here. What happened in Copa code? You look at function fields. Instead of polynomials, you use function field. Okay? And instead of points from finite field, you use points from algebraic curve. Why do you use algebraic curve? Well, because if you define a curve over a certain field, you may have more points than just the size of that field. That's the main thinking. You have more points. Okay? You have more flexibility in choosing it. So Gopa code, think of it, if you want a very quick way of forming a mental picture, something like Ritz-Solomon, instead of polynomial, I have function fields. This is a set of functions that form field. Okay, and then I choose points from algebraic curve. I can identify the point and I evaluate the points properly using my function fields, elements in the function field. Some of them cannot be evaluated properly because you get a zero divisor. But for the majority, if you choose it well, it's okay. So, Gopa code are good based on the mentioned criteria. Okay? They are easy to generate if you know algebraic geometry, and okay, even if you don't know and you know magma, you can. Just look at the list of good polynomial that you can use. Okay? So, but then why not choose something simpler, cyclic code or something like that? Why not choose them? Okay, so for today, I'm just going to describe Gopa code to you the way it is described in magma. There are standard textbooks that you can learn algebraic geometry codes, and if you look at that, Gopa code is algebraic geometry code on genus 1. Zero. Genus 0. Is it correct? Genus 1. Yes. So 0 is the Ritz-Solomon. So okay. You choose a polynomial defined over the degree m extension of fq. So what does that mean? Your polynomial is in here. Okay. Doesn't like me. F, Q, M, Z. That's where your polynomial lives. Okay? And then now you define a sequence of the elements. So you choose a sequence of elements. You look at sequence of elements in your base field for which, so you choose GZ here, for which G of alpha j is never 0 for every alpha j in that sequence L. Sequence L. Okay? And then you just apply that function Gopa code, and last I put the estimate on the parameters. Why are the parameter, especially the dimension estimate? Well, the dimension is estimate is because it's a consequence of the Riemann-Roch theorem. If you're familiar with the Riemann-Roch theorem, this is why it is a lower bound, and the distance is also lower bound. And in fact, there are a lot of works done on sharpening the distance on algebraic geometry codes. It's still very active. Okay? Now, okay, so I figured out yesterday there isn't any point of discussing algebraic geometry codes today. So that's the only thing you're going to see about Gopa codes, okay? If you want to learn more about it, there are references available. Now, why not consider simpler alternative? Can we make the key shorter? Of course, people have tried this. After all, Michaelis came out in 1978, right? But all the major attempts so far has not been successful. So this is an interesting thing that, you know, the oldest proposal is the strongest. So two common attack strategies. First, you want to find the structure of the code, structure of the matrix, the generator matrix. You want to learn, can we get something about the structure? The other philosophy of attack is this: well, I don't care about the structure. Can I recover the key? With or without the structure, can I find the key? Okay, there is also a very rich literature in here, but there is something very, very interesting happening just recently. Decoding failure analysis. This information set decoding is a long time ago. Distinguisher is also rather a long history, but This started, I think, in 2015 or 2014 even, the decoding failure analysis. So that basically, it goes like this. I look at the instances where decoding failed and learn something from that. So, which families of codes? I need to mention strongly here that this is a partial list, okay? I don't want to put more than one slide. So I just choose the ones that I know a little bit. There are more than this. So, binary COPA. MAC is still unbroken but calibrated. You know, calibrated, not the original parameters, but the more sensible parameters now. I mentioned about that earlier. Why binary? Can you try non-binary? No, it's broken. Non-binary broken. Alright, Reed-Solomon, Niederreiter and concatenated code. So this Reed-Solomon and concatenated, Niederreiter proposed it in 86, broken by Sidelnikov-Sestakov, 92, and Songrier, 98. Reed-Muller, 9407, algebraic geometry by Moreno and Janwa. These are really expert in algebraic geometry, broken. This LTPC is interesting. The proposer break it. So they say that, well, this is a proposal, you can do it, but then they, not too long after they say, well, sorry, broken. We break it, okay? Sorry, we thought it was nice, but then, okay. But it's still, you know, useful. So then convolutional, you can see here, it is still very, very active. And this one, quasi-cyclic medium density parity check. This, for a few period, people think that this is now the answer. Because quasi-cyclic, you don't need to store the entire matrix, you just need to store the generator. And why medium density? Well, because sparsity is not good, full density also not good, so they say, okay, medium density, maybe. And this is what I mentioned to you, the decoding failure attack. This is a fantastic paper in Asia Crypt. I happened to review this paper before when it was submitted. And really, I feel like look at it and say, wow, seriously? They can do this? And it's not just a little break, okay? It's complete key recovery. They recover the entire key. Okay, I think, so this is completely off. I think now they have a full version in the transaction of information theory, just coming out a few months ago. I don't remember the detail, but this original one in Asia Crypt 16 is the one that I read carefully. Okay, so Vogel has a distinguisher attack algorithm for binary code, so with high rate. Okay, here I mentioned calibrated. You change the parameter and you don't want the rate to be too high because of this distinguisher attack. This is a work in progress for a few years, and then now I think they have completed it. So, out of all these many things, only the original binary COPA is still okay. And this is the illustrative parameters I mentioned to you about calibration, and that's, so if you use M and T to be this, you know, this is 2 raised to 10, 2 raised to 12, that's T, you get the message security. The security here meaning the adversary needs to do 2 raised to that number to break it. Okay? So let me mention other code-based public key protocols. You can use digital signatures known as the CFS signature. There are protocols for zero knowledge, identity-based signature. Okay? So not as versatile as lattice-based system, because lattice-based system has a lot more functionality, but not too bad. Not too bad. So it's open for further exploration. And let me mention one thing. Sorry, one thing here. Digital signature is, for a reason I don't quite understand, is difficult to build from code base. I don't know why. This, okay, you said the CFS, this CFS signature is Asia Crypt 01. It works, but it scaled very, very badly. You know, very slow to implement. And yeah, so there is a big challenge for signature. Okay? So let me mention this general conclusion. How am I doing in terms of time? How many minutes do I have? 15. Okay, good. So I want to showcase a little bit of the work that I recently completed with COA. It's still under review, so there is a chance that it will be rejected. But okay, I'll highlight a few things. But let me go through the general conclusions of what I've gone through today. Okay? So some code-based crypto systems are practical enough with security guarantee, and they're quite versatile. Let me explain a little bit about practical enough. Practical enough means you can implement it. Okay? With enough resources, you can implement it. But it is not very fast. It's not, no, it is fast. I'm sorry. It is fast. But the key sizes are big. So you don't want the key sizes to be big. Bigger compared to the one which is now widely used. That's what I mean. But it is practical, meaning you can put it to practice. Okay? So that's my meaning when I say it is practical. Strong aspect. We are quite confident in terms of security in post-quantum. It has fast encryption. You remember the encryption, what happened is just a generator matrix. You put your message, encode it in the usual way, add the error. Adding the error is just XOR. Encoding is very fast. Matrix multiplication. We have mechanism to do that very, very fast. And the ciphertext is very short. The ciphertext size is just what happened after encoding, right? So essentially it's just the length of the code. So it's very fast. Not yet strong aspect, large key size, a few code families to choose from. So see, here all these attempts failed. But you can see why it is a good idea. Read Solomon. Easy to construct. You know a lot about it. You know everything about the weight. It's a fantastic thing. It has fast decoder, and encoder and decoder. You can treat it more like a cyclic code. Concatenated. You build from smaller one. Fantastic. Shorter key size. Rittmüller has a lot of geometric structure you can exploit. You know, low density parity check matrix. This is an awesome code as well. This was used a lot in 4G. No, not the best. Polar code is better. So this quasi-cyclic code, Bukit will discuss more about it maybe tomorrow. So I'm not going to talk much about it. But you see here, nothing much to choose from. Just the calibrated and not very high rate binary COPA. So a lot of big challenge. Open problems obviously reduce the key size with gain loss analysis. There is no free lunch. If you want to gain a little bit, you lose something somewhere. So you do a good analysis of what price do I pay for the gain that I get. And this is a lot of work to do here. As I said, all the previous efforts to reduce the key size ended up, complete failure in terms of security. Improve the digital signature scheme, since CFS and its variant do not scale well, and then we want more rigorous security. Koi yesterday, the other day mentioned less assumption is better. So we are looking into, can we make the assumption less? So this is my core thing. So any questions about what we've discussed so far? No? Very clear? Everyone happy? Or completely unclear? Nobody get anything? few minutes, I will mention to you something that we find surprising. I mentioned to you we don't have good signature scheme, right? Surprisingly, we can build group signature scheme. So the signature scheme we don't know how to do, but group signature we know how to do. What is a group signature? Group signature is you have a group of people or user that you authorize to sign. Okay? But this information is not available to your adversary. That person or that computer doesn't know this set. Now, everyone in this set can sign. Okay? The thing is, you need to make sure that the signature part is valid, secure and everything, and then you need to make sure that A cannot frame B. A and B belong to the same group. A cannot frame B. A cannot sign the document and then blame B for that. That person signed it, not me. Okay? So there should be a mechanism to guarantee that should there is a dispute, it can be open and it can be established who actually signed it. Okay, so this work started out in 2013. 2014 we submit to AsiaCrypt, is accepted. 2015 AsiaCrypt, it comes out. Only the first part, the CPA security, and then Kwa is the one who finally found the breakthrough to make it into CCA secure. CCA is chosen ciphertext. So your adversary can fit the system, the ciphertext that it makes itself. No, it builds some ciphertext and put it there, and then look how it is being processed. So we have this. It's available in my webpage, and I think in Kwa's webpage, if you want to take a look. As I said, this is in submission. There is a chance that it is rejected or revised. But if you want to learn the basics on how to implement code base in actual more complex situation, because for group signature you need 3 protocols, okay? Not just encryption. Encryption is just one portion of it. So for the encryption we use this McAleese variant, the randomized McAleese, but there are other protocols that we need to make sure is there. That's why the paper is very long. But as you can see, sometimes you need to be patient. You started in 2013, it got completed just last month. So sometimes it goes like that. So take a look if you want. This is one example that you don't have in Lattice. In Lattice you have a lot of nice digital signature protocols and group signature. Here we don't know how to construct the good signature, but we have group signature. Okay, I'll stop here. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Frederic Ezerman, for the presentation today. Now this is the lunch time, and please take the lunch box to the committee.